Normal people become terrified of criminals.
Shots were just fired. Police just came out and told us, and we're headed there right now.
They become terrified of their own government.
I don't think you're creating culture, you're creating counterculture then. That's what you're producing. And to Hannah's point, it's not going to take 4 years, not an election, it's a generation. Yep. When these Gen Zers have kids, the ones they don't abort, right? Their kids aren't going to want to follow what the parents are doing. Kids want to have counter thoughts to their parents' thoughts.
You can't immediately assume that Gen Z is leftist or liberal. I just saw a poll today that Gen Z, out of I think all generations, has the more males who reject the identifying as feminists. So let me rephrase it. There was a chart saying like Gen Z, Millennial, X, and Boomers, and Gen Z males are the least likely to claim they're feminists. So it's like, and the females are the most likely, which is
they're angry
weird.
At females because they're not getting laid, because the top 5% that are attractive are the ones getting all the swipes on Tinder. That's what's going on, and they're just mad at females, and they're rejecting it.
I think the youngest generation is used to being divided, and I think they will not stay that way as they become older, right? As they age into their 20s, 30s, things will change. And right now we're seeing a reckoning. They are now turning to the people who, led them here, right? When we see everything that's going on with Israel and Palestine and Hamas, they are saying, we believe one thing, but the establishment believes another thing. Do we even belong here anymore? I think a lot of them will shift more independent. I don't think it'll be a perfect, just they all march right over and register as Republicans, but I think generally they are used to being divided, and so therefore they won't mind being unaffiliated. And
I got to stop you there. I think you're completely wrong. They don't hate women. They aren't mad they're not getting laid. They're angry that feminism has created a world in which women are going on OnlyFans and not seeking relationships. And these are guys, many of these men are just like, look, I just want to have like a wife and have a family. And there are many women saying the exact same thing. But women are feeling pressured like they have to go and work. And men are struggling to compete in this hyper-sexualized hookup culture marketplace. So you're getting young guys who are just like, this is F. This does not work. Women, of course, I think the reason why Gen Z females are the most likely to say they're feminists, they have to. It's peer pressure. It's social pressure. Mm-hmm. That women are more susceptible to social pressure than men are. So the guys are just like, get out of here with that stuff. I can't stand it. And what do they want? Guys probably just want to get married. I mean, look, there are many guys who just want to get laid. That's true. But I think the average guy just wants to get married.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think there is intense social pressure. I mean, I felt this way when I was, in public high school doing whatever. And they were like, well, if you're a woman, you have to be a feminist. You have to be a feminist. You have to be a feminist. And, every generation that is surveyable right now, this is a Pew Research study, the majority of all age groups identify as feminists, but yet women are unhappy and hopeless. So we know, there's a reason that Jezebel shuttered today, right? Like the feminist publication couldn't survive, yet we have Evie magazine on the rise. There is a desire that
explain Evie.
So Evie is, I just know it as an alternative women's magazine. They particularly pay attention to more traditional values, and they promote femininity over feminism. And I love the work that they do. And I think that they are, one of the reasons I got into them is that they were just interested in, classical beauty. They're not trying to make you cut all your hair off and dress ambiguously. They're just saying you should like being a woman, and that's cool. And I think there are lots of young women who are looking for that. And the thing is, women skew towards wanting, emotional and social acceptance, and that can be a strength. I don't mean to downplay it at all, but that means if all the women around you say, I'm a feminist and men are bad, then you are likely to also think, maybe that's the way. And we have new outlets coming out that are offering them an alternative. So even though the majority of young women today, Gen Z, may say they're feminists right now, I wonder if that will change. And you'll get the stories that are like, I regret identifying as feminist. My mom raised me, my intense feminist mother raised me, and she was wrong. I love her, but this was not the right path. Because ultimately the genders aren't supposed to be enemies. They're supposed to be partners.
Mm-hmm. A lot of it's going to be too late, though. A lot of these girls who are OnlyFans, who are doing these things, it's going to be too late for them. Men don't want that. Men do not want that.
It's crazy. Every day we see more and more stories about women being like, I quit my job and I did OnlyFans and wow, I made so much money. And it's just like, wow, that's poison. Mm-hmm. Absolute poison. But this is what modern leftists and feminism promotes, the sex positive culture. And it is really fascinating that what are we getting? Women's sports are slowly, males are competing in women's sports. And women are quitting their careers, like as doctors, nurses, police officers, as professional fighters, to do porn.
They're the most sexually objectified they have ever been. And this is what feminism is saying, like, good, this is what we wanted. Unless a man does it, then it's bad, except also who's paying for your OnlyFans.
Yep.
Men are clicking, men are paying.
That's right.
I know a lot of women who, adapted those feminist qualities throughout high school, never got married, and now they're my age. I'm 38, and they still act like they're in high school, or college. So it's a lot
That's
of
all
partying.
millennials, dude.
Yeah.
This is what I've been saying about millennials. Why I loathe the millennial generation. They have this mentality that you can't be a boss. This is communism, okay? And this is a component of communism. And I think it comes from college. I think it comes from it's not at its root college. It's what college has become. You've got a kid. He grows up from 0 to 5, does nothing. At 5 years old, he begins kindergarten. Maybe there's preschool there and daycare and stuff, and little bits here and there, but mostly nothing. 5 years old to 13, you've got grade school. They're told what to do. Then high school. They're told what to do. Then college. They're told what to do. They graduate at 22 and they say, what should I do now? The government comes around and says, we'll tell you what to do. This is why I think we don't see very many millennial politicians. It's why we don't see, it's why you get all these millennials complaining about boomers have all the wealth, they're hoarding the wealth. And I'm like, it's because millennials aren't doing anything. And I think the reason is millennials have this mental block where they think they're not good enough and someone else is in charge. So this is, and that's exemplified by looking at a presidential election with a bunch of octogenarians or septuagenarians. Why is everybody so old? No, don't get me wrong. Ron DeSantis is up there. Okay. Vivek, of course, is up there, but it's few and far between. And again, boomers control the wealth. Why? Millennials keep saying the boomer's my boss. Instead of saying, I'm going to be my own boss and start a business. Then they go, but it's so hard to get money. It's so hard to do. Ask any of these people how they started their business. They started from nothing. Look at the business we're building here. We started with nothing, quite literally. Like, I got a job. I saved up money. I got a better job. I saved up money. And then I started my independent business practice and slowly built up to this point. There's no secret. It's sacrifice, grind through the mud and the dirt, work your fingers to the bone and build it up.
I think you also have to be willing to accept responsibility, though. And I think that's what a lot of millennials don't want. They have this desire to stay childish in so many ways. And that keeps them from, all good things take a little bit of risk, right? So if you really want to be run your own business, you have to accept that that will come with some responsibility. You may have to be, responsible for providing your own health insurance or whatever it is, or you don't get that. And they would ultimately rather have someone to blame.
I think if I'm watching someone play a video game and they're bad at it, I get really frustrated. And I'm just like, give me the controller? Like, dude, you're not jumping right. Let me do it. And then I'll be like,
You can
watch.
never watch me play a video game.
No, I can't. I'm like, leave. I'll play. I'll do my thing. I struggle with watching other people try to solve problems that I feel like I could solve faster and better. And call me arrogant, call me cocky, call me whatever you want. That is the mentality that leads me to look my 40-year-old boss in the eye when I'm 16 and say, you're a moron. I could do your job better than you. I quit. And I leave. I'm not kidding. When I was 16, I was working at a fast food restaurant, and I guarantee you I could have done a better job than the manager they hired. Why? Because I had experience doing managerial work at my family's cafe when I was 12. So I'm like, I saw my mom do all this stuff. She taught me some of it. Then I see a guy who gets hired, has zero experience, but, he was an assistant manager, at a different shop. So when he comes in here, he doesn't understand how anything works. Everything's kind of getting jammed up. Everything's bad. Like scheduling is bad. And I'm like, bro, I've been here longer than you. I know how this works better than you. They hired you for arbitrary reasons. So I said, I ain't doing this. I'm out. I'm going to do my own thing. What do? I've done a bunch of things in my life to make money. One day I'm like, I need to pay my rent. So I took my guitar and I went down and I played in the subway in Chicago. And then I got yelled at and said, you need a permit. So I went downtown, paid the $5, got the permit, went back, got into a fight with some guy who was dancing with a football because he's like, this is my spot. And I'm like, okay. And I would make probably $15 an hour just playing guitar. I'd play for 2 or 3 hours, top 40s. I'd make like $45 and then I'd go put it in the bank and then I'd be done. I'm like, that was so much fun. I'm just jamming, playing the guitar. Then I figured something out. I went to Wrigley, baseball field, right as a game was ending. I made $200 in 1 hour because everybody's wasted. And I was like, wow, why would I get a job? And all of my friends were like, I'm broke. I need a job. And I'm like, look, man, I'll be honest. I've had jobs, right? I went and worked at a bar. It was hard to find jobs. I worked at the airport for a couple of years. And then it was actually after the airport, I decided I'm going to go just play guitar on the street. and make money. And then eventually I got bored and worked for nonprofits and stuff like that. But ultimately, it always comes down to what I see today is people who say it's either the get out of my way and let me do it, or I ain't touching that. That's your problem.
I think you're explaining a solution-oriented mindset, right? A lot of kids don't learn how to fail because we just do it for them. And a lot of millennials, they weren't allowed to fail. They got all their trophies, they were just pushed through grades, and they never had to figure out how to find a solution to get better at something.
Right.
My kids, I love when they fail. It is the most exciting thing that I see from them because then we get to talk about finding solutions.
Yeah.
Well, how did you fail at this thing? What thing did you do wrong? Well, what could you try differently next time? And my kids, they find solutions. They fail a couple of times and they get better at it.
I wish that wasn't rare, but I do the same with my kids, and you got to let them fail. You know, that's the big lesson. I think the system we're in infantilizes young men and women, and so they're risk averse, like you were saying earlier. And you know, you can see that even in little things.
And lazy.
And super lazy. But like even little things, like they're afraid to pick up the phone. You know, because they're afraid of even answering and talking to a real person. You know, like, that's crazy.
I recorded a segment today, which is coming out tomorrow on my Timcast news channel, of this woke woman getting pulled over for a DUI. She's driving the wrong way down the road. She smells like alcohol. She gets pulled over and she admits to having several drinks. And the cop is so nice. And she's like, I'm non-binary. And he's like, okay, man, I'm sorry. Okay, I'll try my best. And then he's like, can you walk in a straight line for me? And she's like, no, because I have mental health issues and like generational trauma because. And then when he finally decides, there's one point where he's like, follow my finger. No, ma'am, follow my finger. I'm trying, but you're trying to intimidate me. And he's like, I don't know how I'm doing that. Then when he finally decides to arrest her, she's like, dude, you're being a white man. And this is what's going on in their brains. She was driving the wrong way down the road into oncoming traffic after having several drinks. I don't want to say she's drunk. I don't know. She had 3 drinks, maybe. And so she gets pulled over for it. Get out of the car. And she's like, I don't want to get out of my car. And he goes, we're past that now, out of the car. You know, step out. And she's like, okay. And then she said, you're being a white man. Think about the mental perspective she must have on driving drunk the wrong way down a road, and it's the fault of the officer for being a white man.
Did she go to Evergreen College? Where Brett Weinstein was? Remember, like they were yelling at the guy for being like, the hand movements are aggressive. Put them down.
But they were lying about that because after he stopped, they all laughed at him.
Oh yeah, no, they were using that against him for sure.
Did he identify himself as a white male? How did she know?
That's right.
No, she just used it like a slur, which is also telling, right? What if she had said like, "Oh, you're acting like a Korean man"? Like, would that mean something different? No, it's only to insult him as a white man.
One of the funniest things is she goes, "I have really bad social anxiety," and then he goes, "You and me both." And then she goes, "Okay." Like, your stupid lie and excuse and victimization didn't work on this guy. She tried every card in the book, and then she got arrested. But this is the generation that gets created. It is not all millennials, obviously. I'm a millennial. I don't know. How old are you?
38.
We're all millennials. Look at us sitting here. Oh, those dang millennials. They ruined millennialism. They ruined the generation. Yeah.
I had a grandfather. I think it made a big difference.
Yeah.
I think grandfathers are like they're the gatekeepers of the old ways. And most of our generation can't even find their fathers.
Totally.
That's so sad.
I would
Did you
always
spend a lot of time with your grandfather? Sorry.
I was just to
actually.
say.
He's my hero. This man, a couple of motorcycle accidents. Last one, he rolled 15 times. He had multiple skin graft surgery, eye hanging out of his face. Wow. They told him, you have brain damage. You're never going to exist the way you did. This man went back to school and got a PhD. Wow. And he got several other letters of certification by his name, spent the rest of his life helping drug addicts, alcoholics. This man is my hero.
My grandpa once, I may have told the story. I made a peanut butter and jelly sandwich when I was staying with him when I was 18. And he was going to give me a ride somewhere. And then he's like, come on, let's get out of here. And then I looked down at the sandwich and I was like, I'll throw it away. He's like, what's wrong with it? And I was like, it's got mold on it. He walks over, grabs it, shoves it in his mouth. And he goes, do you have any idea what we ate during the Depression? Let's go. That's my grandpa.
Exactly.
Thanks,
I was going to say, like, it's so important to talk to the older people in your life. And if you have a grandfather, grandma, like I interviewed mine for hours before he passed away, for years. I have multiple hours of interviews with him because I could learn about so much time before you hear war. He was a cop in New York City in the 70s when it was all on fire. Then he was a hearse driver. So kind of like ran the gamut of like death, war, life, marriage and all these things. And a lot of people don't have that access to someone who's older.
And also you have to foster family relationships, right? Like my parents were older when they had kids anyways, but also my parents were immigrants to the US. So we didn't see our grandparents that often. And I think about now, technology is so advanced where like your kids' grandparents could call them on the phone. They could have access. And it's like we don't appreciate what we have in that connection because we're so busy saying the older generation did this. And I'm here to blame the boomers for all kinds of stuff too, but also they were your parents. You should get to know them. And I think part of growing up is accepting that your parents are humans and have faults and have failed. And so many people aren't ready to do that, even though they are at an age where they could become parents.
And learning from their mistakes, kind of like how you watch your kids learn from their mistakes, right? Because they got a ton of they can tell you about too.
I still have dinner with my grandma once or twice a month. I bring all the kids over because it's important.
This is why I hate Rahm Emanuel's brother. I forget his name, but he wrote that article. I think it might have been in Time magazine.
Jim Emanuel.
Maybe. I don't know. I forget. But he wrote the thing about how old people should let themselves die, and we shouldn't have we should have a society without old people. And as I'm reading that article, my kid was downstairs, with his great grandma, learning about history the same way I did, from the same woman, from her perspective. And I was like, this is just straight up evil.
Yeah, but they don't want you to have family. I mean, the nuclear family, like the mom, dad, children relationship is really important, but the extended family is a gift into itself. And if you have a strong extended family with good values who can support each other, then you are less reliant on the government anyways, which is exactly what they don't want.
Exactly. They want to destroy the family, and it goes back to infantilizing everybody so that when you are 21, 22, the government steps in as your mommy, daddy.
There are certain countries, I think Iceland is one of them, that will give grandparents tax breaks or some kind of, income or whatever if they are going to, instead of enrolling the kid in daycare or state-sponsored school, whatever, if they stay with the grandparents, and the grandparents are the ones who take care of them while the parents are working or doing whatever. That means that, like, instead of a stranger, your parents, who potentially you have a good relationship with, would be spending time with your children in an environment that tends to your child's specific needs because they love and care about them. Like, that's a great system.
Now, here's the challenge. We all recognize this issue because we were raised well. And there are other people who don't care at all because they were not. You can't go to one of these millennials and be like, listen, it's very important and here's why, because they're going to say, you're nuts, I don't care, where's the sex party at? And then when they're, oh man, I am not looking forward to aging millennials, right? One of the debate questions is about raising the age of retirement and Social Security. It is going to be wild when you have a whole bunch of single, isolated, childless individuals like just demanding the government pay their bills for them. What is the marketplace going to look like?
The government's going to give you 3D printed suicide pods.
I think, I would not be surprised if
Trudeau just got an erection after hearing that.
That's why MAID is emerging most likely.
Seriously.
I would not be surprised if the younger generations forcefully enact some kind of homing for aging millennials. And I'll tell you why. Right now, the market for, look, millennials are in their 30s. It's like early 30s, maybe late 20s, but mostly early 30s to late 30s. These are people who can still run and jump and somersault and backflip and eat pizza. But, man, once you're getting around 37, 38, you got to cut the salt down. You got to be careful what you're eating. You got to start stretching more in these things. Imagine what it's going to be like when they're 50 and 60 and they can't do any of these things, but they're still single and childless. What will they do? We are going to have a wave of stories about a strange stench coming from an apartment building. It is not, these happen periodically. It's like neighbors noticed a strange smell and found Edna had passed away several days earlier.
Happened down the road from me in my hometown.
It is going to be nuts. And I would not be surprised if a law gets passed where it's like checkups have to be performed on anybody over the age of 65 because of how many dead bodies are being found isolated in their homes. I'll tell you what's scary, a scary thought, is that you could be 25 years old, take a shower in the morning in your one-bedroom apartment, you're single, you got work, and you step out of the bathtub and you slip and you hit your head on the sink and you're dead. And no one knows. And then a week goes by and they're like, damn, at 25? Now it's rare, right? It gets increasingly more likely when you get older and you start falling and you're out of shape. It's going to be nuts when we have, it's going to be tens of millions more millennials who are single and childless in their 60s living in studios. It's going to be absolutely nuts. They're going to, and if there's no family member to put them in a home, what happens? Mass elderly homelessness of millennials. And then, so one of the things that may happen is they're going to vote for weird, crazy communist garbage. And that may start, that will absolutely extract from the younger generation Already, Social Security is insolvent. The older generation is getting paid and the younger generation's paying for it. But we're not having kids. So population's going to decline. Then Social Security won't be maintained and millennials are going to be old and they're going to say, no, I paid, I get my fair share. And the younger generation's going to be like, we can run faster than you. We're going to send in the law enforcement to bring you to homes. And that's going to be your welfare.
What scares me also is the amount of SSRIs those depressed people are going to be taking, and how many more people are going to be on these pills, and how crazy they're going to get. After all that depression,
this
if
is
they're
why,
not hooked up to the metaverse.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're
I was going to
gonna be
say,
totally
this is
screen
why
addicted.
they are trying so hard to make the Neuralink in the metaverse.
Yeah.
So then they can just strap you in the pod, sink the pod into the ground, lock it up, and then you're in the Matrix.
And it doubles as the suicide pod.
I looked at the number. I think it's up by
Just
like
turn the
30
switch,
or
yeah.
40% SSRI intake across the past 10 years.
Yeah.
I think it's up 30 or 40%. It's a ridiculous number.
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane. It's really scary.
And there's not like most people who take SSRIs are just on them forever, which I don't want to be, too general about it. There are people who really benefit from it, but they aren't saying, have you considered your lifestyle, changing your lifestyle? Have you considered changing your diet? Have you considered, exercising more? Have you thought about, stop hanging out with all these people that make you miserable? Instead, it's just sort of like continue to pay for therapy and SSRIs indefinitely forever.
We
You
just
know,
like
just
putting
give me a
Band-Aids.
pill. Why is it not working?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mean I can't keep living immorally?
But it won't be a pill. Eventually, it'll be a plug. I think it'll be like you know how the Apple laptop chargers work? They're magnets and it just clicks in. It doesn't actually like interlock. It just snaps. That's what it's going to be for the Neuralink. There's going to be thin copper cables that go into your, I think that's what they're doing. It goes into your like cerebellum or whatever. And you'll have like a little metal pad and you'll just take a little magnet thing and it'll stick right to it. And then
Well, Elon's looking for people right now if they want to sign up to volunteer, because FDA has approved human trials where the robot he built will cut open your skull and thread the implant into your brain. And
Yes,
then you
yes,
can go
but
for that. Cool.
This
No,
is
thank
for
you.
this is for people who are blind, deaf, paralyzed.
Yes.
I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah.
But the problem is we know where it goes.
Exactly.
And you're going to have some 60-year-old millennial woman being like, I just don't have any friends anymore, and I'm so lonely. And they're going to be like, would you like to be 20 again and go partying back on the north side of Chicago? Plug on in, baby, and sit in the pod, and we'll pump you full of bugs.
Right.
I would choose a different thing. I would be like the head of the DOJ and go after all the Epstein people.
All the Epstein. You choose to live in the reality where you get justice, and you're locked in the pod with a smile
Everyone on the
your face.
island's getting arrested.
I
Send
think
me
that's
in.
the thing, though. We have like one of the battles for making to like reinvesting in culture and reinvigorating culture is to make it so that life outside the pod is better and worth it. Even when things are hard, it is more desirable to be there. Because I think about if you can go into the pod, I guess you could see all your loved ones or whatever else, but they're not real. Like you have to want the reality enough, even with the bad parts of it. And I think we have generations that are being trained to numb themselves and avoid things always, which makes the Neuralink sort of an inevitable reality because it's the ultimate numbing. It takes you out of who you are.
COVID lockdowns accelerated like the divorce between people who hate reality, like nature, right? And you saw a lot of people stay in their homes. I know people who had young kids who did not leave their home for 5 to 6 months.
Right.
And they could get their groceries delivered. They could be safe. Somehow they still got COVID in the apartments. That's another story. But like their identities meant more to them online. So their digital identities took over their physical identities, which is why Metaverse is going to take over, which is why it's hilarious the other day when we're sharing that image of that person who had their avatar as the girl, but Sydney, whatever the name was, right? But in real life, it's just a trans person.
It was a guy.
who's like a 50-year-old dude, right? With a ponytail.
Well, we've talked about it. It's the movie Surrogates. You've seen it?
No.
Yeah.
It's a world where everyone sits in a pod and they have a robot version of themselves go out and work. It's safer. And there's like this hot chick making out with the guy. There's an accident that happens. And so they try and track down the owner of the surrogate, and they find a 500-pound morbidly obese man in a pod, also dead because some crazy thing happened. But the point is, they were like, oh, that hot chick you're making out with, 500-pound morbidly obese man.
That's like OnlyFans right now, and there's guys messaging women who's or the messages are coming from dudes in like wherever they're from, Idaho.
The crazy thing is people don't care. On Instagram, you have a whole bunch of AI-generated accounts, and they say they are, and it's crazy. People are commenting like, you're so beautiful. I'm like, it says AI-generated person. They don't care.
They don't care.
But there's no risk telling AI you're beautiful, right? There's no risk in doing that. It's not actually going out and having to meet a girl and say, hey, I think you're pretty and I'd love to take you to dinner.
Look, have you ever played a
No
video
risk.
game with cheat codes?
Game Genie.
It gets boring.
Yeah.
Real fast.
So what happens is typically the way you do it is you play the game, you beat it. Once you're done, then you play with cheat codes for fun to explore the game. But after a while, you're like, I can do whatever I want whenever I want. I'm over it. I'm bored. This is what Metaverse is going to be like unless people choose to enter simulated realities with rules and limits. Otherwise, they'll get bored real quick.
Which is the end goal of communism, to make people feel like they're the god. It's a false reality of them being the god. Whereas obviously, though, that's not the case, because the god becomes the government and then they destroy you. But they want to make you pretend that you're in charge and have agency.
It makes me feel like we're on the cusp of a lot of people waking up to this. I mean, I'm a girl, so I like a lot of relationship podcasts, and a lot of them, you'll have girls calling in, talking about breakups and being like, he was just really controlling. He wanted to control me. And it's like, yes, because ultimately that is the same guy who will pick to be in the Neuralink so that he can control the entire environment around him. Like, we're all headed the same direction.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.